Lieutenant Cole stood alone in the barren wasteland, his boots crunching against the cracked, dry earth. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape. The remnants of an alien warship lay scattered in pieces around him, the wreckage still smoking faintly, a reminder of the chaos that had recently unfolded. His mission had been clear: to provide medical support for the survivors of the conflict, but as he surveyed the area, there was no sign of life, just the stillness of a battlefield. He was about to call it in, ready to head back to base, when something caught his eye. A flash of movement, a small figure, hidden beneath the wreckage, barely visible in the dim light. His heart skipped a beat. The motion was slow, deliberate. A survivor, or perhaps another enemy soldier. He couldn't be sure. Without hesitation, Cole adjusted his pack and crouched low to the ground. His breath was steady, his mind sharp as he made his way toward the debris. His hands flexed around the medical tools he carried at his belt, instinctively ready for whatever lay ahead. The figure came into clearer view as he approached. It was an alien, barely conscious, her body half buried beneath a pile of twisted metal and broken tech. She was breathing shallowly, her skin a pale blue shade that shimmered faintly in the fading light. Her face was bruised, her arms and legs twisted at unnatural angles. Blood, dark and thick, stained her clothing, pooling around her limp form. Cole's heart pounded in his chest. He knelt beside her, gently lifting away the jagged metal pieces that trapped her. His hands moved quickly, a combination of training and adrenaline guiding him. The alien's fragile body was warm to the touch, but the coldness in her eyes sent a chill down his spine. He didn't know who she was, or where she came from, but one thing was certain: she wasn't going to survive much longer without help. "Stay with me," he whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. The words were more of a comfort to himself than anything else. He placed a hand on her forehead, feeling the faint pulse beneath her cool skin. He had been in situations like this before, treating soldiers, civilians, anyone caught in the crossfire of a war they couldn't control. But this was different. This was an alien, someone entirely outside his experience. And it wasn't just her life at stake. If he helped her, he had no idea what consequences might follow. It could lead to a misunderstanding, or worse, retaliation from the opposing forces. But the medic inside him couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when there was still a chance. He quickly scanned the wreckage for any sign of supplies. His medical kit had enough for basic treatment, but this was far beyond a simple field dressing. She needed advanced care, something beyond what he could offer in the middle of nowhere. His mind raced. Was there a way to get her back to base? No, it would take too long. She didn't have that much time. A sudden thought struck him. Cybernetics. He had studied some of the more advanced techniques, seen it used on soldiers in recovery, but this was different. This would require something beyond simple repairs. She needed a way to survive, to fight through the pain and the damage her body had sustained. Cole's heart pounded faster. The possibility of using cybernetic enhancements flashed in his mind. It was risky, but it could work. He looked back down at her face, her expression peaceful yet haunting. If he could stabilize her long enough, maybe, just maybe, he could give her a chance at life. A second chance. Without wasting another moment, Cole began his work. He pulled open his medical kit and found the basic tools he would need for first aid. But his mind was already moving ahead. He needed something more than what was at his disposal. The chance of survival for this alien girl was slim without the right technology. He couldn't rely on standard procedures here. He needed something more. "Come on," he muttered to himself, his fingers trembling as he fumbled with the medical tools. He had no idea what kind of alien technology she was carrying, if any. But he could start with the basics. He could stabilize her for now, long enough to make a decision. His hands worked quickly, applying pressure to the worst of her wounds, tying makeshift bandages around her legs and arms to halt the bleeding. He knew this was only a temporary fix, but it was all he could manage for the moment. The alien girl remained motionless, but her breathing steadied, the shallow rise and fall of her chest offering a small sign of hope. Cole's mind flashed back to his training. He had treated injuries before, battle wounds, internal injuries, even cybernetic enhancements in humans, but nothing like this. Nothing so alien. He had no idea how her body worked, what her species' anatomy even looked like beyond the surface, but he couldn't let her die. He couldn't walk away, not when the possibility of saving her was right there. His gaze shifted to the sky. In the distance, he could see the faint outline of a shuttle, the hum of engines cutting through the air. He was close to the base, but was it too far for her to survive? The shuttle was already on its way back to base. He had no way of calling it back, and even if he did, it might take too long to arrive. The decision was clear. He had to take a risk. Cole gently lifted the alien girl into his arms, her small, fragile body barely fitting against his chest. She was warm, and despite the injuries, she felt alive. He needed to get her to the ship. The human medic had given up his chance for safety, but he couldn't let this alien die in front of him. With his heart racing and his mind focused on the mission, Cole moved quickly, carrying her toward the waiting shuttle. The journey ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. He had made a decision, and he wasn't going to let it be his last. Lieutenant Cole had no idea what he was getting himself into. The small alien girl, whom he had just rescued from certain death, now lay unconscious in his shuttle, her body still weak from the injuries. The journey back to base was quiet, save for the low hum of the shuttle's engines and the occasional beep from the ship's diagnostic panel. Cole's eyes were fixed on the controls, his hands steady on the piloting sticks. He had never been this focused before. Every part of his body screamed with exhaustion, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he had an alien in his care. Not when she was so close to death. As the shuttle descended into the medical bay, Cole made sure to land it as gently as possible, careful not to shake the alien girl too much. He hadn't wanted to use the ship's medical facilities at first. He was afraid they wouldn't be able to help her in time. But it was clear now that he needed their advanced technology. He quickly carried her into the facility, doing his best to move quickly yet gently. The staff was already alerted to his arrival, and as he walked into the sterile white room, he was greeted by a team of medical personnel. "We need immediate stabilization," Cole said, his voice urgent but calm. "She's in critical condition. I don't know what caused her injuries, but she's too weak to survive without help. We need to act fast." The medical staff immediately went to work, preparing the tools they would need for the task ahead. Cole stepped back, his eyes never leaving the girl on the table. He was sure they could save her, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at him. Who was this alien? Where did she come from? Why was she here, alone, on this planet? A nurse turned to him, her voice soft. "We'll take it from here, Lieutenant. You did well bringing her in. You're free to rest for now." But Cole didn't move. He didn't trust anyone else to handle her care. He couldn't just sit back and wait when it was his decision to save her that had brought her here. His mind kept racing with questions he had no answers to. Who was she? What was she doing here? Was she a threat? Or was she just another victim of the endless wars that seemed to plague the galaxy? His gaze was fixed on the alien girl, and as he watched the medics work on her, he noticed something strange. There were tiny markings on her skin, almost like tattoos or symbols. They looked like intricate patterns that shimmered faintly, almost as though they were alive. Cole had never seen anything like it before. He wondered if they were part of her species' identity, or perhaps something to do with her status. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the nurse approaching him until she spoke. "Lieutenant, we've stabilized her. It's a good sign. But I think you should know that her injuries are unlike anything we've encountered. The damage to her body is extensive, and I'm afraid that without proper treatment, there's a chance she could slip into a coma. She may never wake up." Cole clenched his fists, trying to contain the sudden rush of panic that threatened to take over him. He couldn't let that happen. He couldn't let her die after everything he'd done to save her. "I need to know more about her," Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. "Where did she come from? What happened to her?" The nurse looked at him, her face full of sympathy. "We've been able to access some of her neural activity. She seems to be processing information, but her mind is still disconnected from her body in some places. We think it might be due to the cybernetic enhancements." Cybernetics. The word sent a jolt of recognition through Cole's mind. He had heard of cybernetic enhancements in other alien species. Some used them for medical reasons, while others used them for combat purposes. But it was clear this alien girl had something far beyond simple enhancements. She had been outfitted with a system that not only repaired her damaged body, but seemed to take control of certain functions as well. Cybernetics, Cole repeated, his mind spinning. What kind of system are we talking about? The nurse shook her head. "We don't have enough data to fully understand her system yet, but it's unlike anything we've encountered before. The enhancements appear to be designed for rapid healing, but they're far more advanced than our human technology. There's a chance they could even be causing some of the instability in her body." Cole stared at the alien girl, his mind racing with the implications. If she was wearing this kind of technology, it meant she wasn't just a simple civilian. She was someone important. But who? And what kind of alien species had technology so advanced that it could repair a body as damaged as hers? A sudden beeping noise interrupted his thoughts, and the nurse quickly checked the monitors. "She's regaining consciousness," the nurse said, her voice urgent. "Lieutenant, you should speak to her. She might be able to answer some of your questions." Cole stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he had a sinking feeling that everything was about to change. The alien girl's eyes fluttered open, and she blinked several times, as if trying to adjust to the bright lights above her. "Where am I?" Her voice was soft, strained, and it carried a strange melodic quality that Cole couldn't quite place. "What happened?" Cole's breath caught in his throat. Her voice was unlike anything he had ever heard before. But before he could respond, she turned her head to look at him, her eyes locking onto his with a piercing gaze. I was dying," she whispered. "You saved me." Cole nodded, unsure of what to say next. "I'm Lieutenant Cole. You were injured, and I did what I could to help you." The alien girl's expression softened, and for a moment, there was a look of gratitude in her eyes. But then, as if remembering something important, her face grew serious again. "I am Lyra," she said quietly. "I was sent to scout, to warn. But they attacked us. They—" Her voice trailed off as her eyes closed again, exhaustion taking over. Cole stood there, feeling the weight of her words. She was part of something bigger, something he didn't understand. And now he had no choice but to learn. The days that followed Lyra's awakening were filled with uncertainty. Cole sat beside her bed for hours each day, watching over her as she slowly recovered. Her condition had stabilized, thanks to the medical team's efforts, but she was still far from fully healed. The cybernetic implants in her body seemed to be working, but they were doing so much more than just healing her physical injuries. They were transforming her in ways Cole didn't fully understand. Lyra had been awake for brief periods, her eyes wide with confusion, her voice shaky as she asked more questions about the world around her. She still didn't seem to fully comprehend what had happened, but Cole could see the flickers of recognition in her eyes whenever she spoke of her people. Despite the loss, the fear, and the pain, there was still a spark of determination in her. One evening, after Cole had finished his shift and the other medical staff had left, he found himself sitting by Lyra's side once again. The sterile white room around them seemed so quiet, almost too quiet for a place that was meant to heal. The soft hum of the medical equipment was the only sound, and Cole found it oddly soothing. Lyra was lying still, her breathing steady but shallow. She had fallen asleep earlier, but Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had seen it in the way she moved, the way her body seemed to react to the cybernetic enhancements. It wasn't just her injuries that concerned him anymore. It was the unknowns surrounding the technology that had been integrated into her body. The more he thought about it, the more he realized there was only one option left. He needed to make a decision, one that would alter the course of both their lives. He had the skills to help her, but he didn't have the right tools. The medical facilities on his ship were advanced, but they weren't designed for this kind of procedure. He needed a different kind of technology, something more specialized, something capable of dealing with alien biology and advanced cybernetics. His mind kept drifting back to the risky thought he had earlier. Cybernetic enhancements weren't new to him. He had seen them used by soldiers in the past, and he had read about the technology used by other species. But this was different. This wasn't just some minor repair to a broken limb. Lyra's body had been remade, enhanced, and now it was almost like it had a life of its own. If he didn't act soon, the implants might start taking control, overriding her natural systems. She could lose herself in the process, and he couldn't let that happen. Cole stood up and paced around the room, running his hand through his short, dark hair. He knew he couldn't do it alone. The situation was too complicated, too dangerous. The more he learned about Lyra's race, the more he realized how little he truly knew. This wasn't just a question of healing her. It was a question of preserving her mind, her identity, everything that made her who she was. The decision weighed heavily on him. Could he trust the technology enough to perform such a delicate procedure? Could he enhance her implants to the point where they wouldn't just save her, but also restore her fully? He was no expert in alien cybernetics, but he knew one thing for sure. If he didn't try, there was a very real chance she would slip away, both physically and mentally. Finally, he made up his mind. He wasn't going to wait any longer. He had to take the risk. With a deep breath, Cole walked over to the desk in the corner of the room, where his datapad lay waiting. He quickly accessed the ship's medical network, looking for any information he could find about the specific kind of cybernetics Lyra had. What he found was unsettling. The implants in her body were unlike anything they had encountered before. They were clearly of alien origin, and the system was advanced to the point of almost being organic. There was no clear manual or guide on how to safely interact with them. Cole's fingers hesitated over the datapad screen. He thought about all the possible dangers. What could go wrong if the procedure failed? The idea of causing harm to this alien girl, after everything he had done to save her, sent a chill down his spine. He couldn't let that happen. He stood still for a moment, looking at the screen, deep in thought. Finally, he tapped a few commands, sending a request to the main command center. He needed access to the ship's advanced medical resources that were specifically designed to handle alien biology and technology. This was going to be difficult, and it would take time. But Cole knew that without these resources, the risk would be too great. As he waited for the response, he sat back down beside Lyra, watching the rise and fall of her chest. The room was silent again, but this time, the silence felt heavy, filled with the weight of the decision he had just made. There was no turning back now. Lyra stirred slightly in her sleep, her brows furrowing as if she were in pain. Cole gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what comfort he could. "You'll be okay," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him. "I'll make sure of it." A soft beep from his datapad broke the silence, and Cole looked down at the screen. The request had been approved. He had the green light to proceed. He stood up, his heart racing once again. There was no more waiting. He had to start the procedure now. Every second counted. As he prepared to leave the room to gather the necessary tools and information, he glanced at Lyra one last time. Her eyes flickered open, and for the first time since her awakening, she looked directly at him. There was confusion in her gaze, but also something else. Trust. "I'm here," Cole said softly, meeting her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to help you." Lyra's lips parted, and her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of her gratitude. "Thank you," she said. Cole nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Rest now. I'll be back soon. With that, he turned and left the room, his mind focused entirely on the challenge ahead. This was the beginning of something new, not just for Lyra, but for him as well. The decision had been made. There was no going back. The medical bay was quiet, save for the faint hum of the machines and the soft beeping of monitors. Cole stood by the surgical table, his gloves on, his mind focused entirely on the task ahead. Lyra lay still, her body now fully connected to the advanced cybernetic equipment that had been integrated into her broken form. The tools and instruments that Cole had gathered from the ship's medical facility were spread out on the nearby table, ready for use. He wasn't sure what he was doing, at least not entirely. The alien cybernetics in her body were beyond anything he had ever seen. It was one thing to work with human technology, which he had trained for, but this was different. Yet, as he studied her, he knew there was no other choice. Lyra's survival depended on him now. He checked the monitor's AGA in. The pulse readings, although steady, were still low. She hadn't regained full consciousness yet, and Cole couldn't help but wonder if his efforts were enough. But there was a feeling in his gut, a sense of hope that he couldn't ignore. Lyra's condition had improved dramatically since he first brought her aboard the ship. The cybernetic enhancements had already begun to stabilize the most severe injuries, but Cole had a nagging feeling that something was still missing. The technology in her body wasn't simply meant to heal. It was meant to enhance, to make her stronger than she was before. His hand shook slightly as he prepared the next step of the procedure. With a final deep breath, Cole connected the neural stabilizer to Lyra's neural interface. The machine was designed to sync the cybernetic components with her body's natural systems, allowing them to function together as one. The machine clicked into place with a soft whir. As soon as it did, a wave of energy surged through Lyra's body. Her chest rose and fell faster, and for the first time in days, her eyes fluttered open. She blinked a few times, confusion clouding her gaze, but then it cleared, and her focus shifted directly onto Cole. He had been holding his breath, but at that moment, his chest released a sigh of relief. She was awake. Lyra, he said softly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Can you hear me? Her lips parted, and her voice was weak, but there was clarity in her words. I'm alive. Cole nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Yes, you are. You're going to be okay. She blinked again, as if processing his words. Her eyes looked down at the connections between her body and the medical equipment. Then, slowly, she flexed her fingers, feeling the strength in them. The metal parts of her body hummed with a quiet energy, and her limbs, once broken, moved with more precision than before. What happened? Lyra asked, her voice strained but growing stronger. She looked at Cole, confusion still evident on her face. Where am I? You're on my ship, Cole replied. I found you after your ship was attacked. You were badly injured, but I've been working to save you. I've connected some of your enhancements to help with the healing process. Lyra took a moment to process his words. Her eyes widened as she looked down at herself again, studying the cybernetic enhancements that had replaced parts of her damaged body. She ran a hand over the sleek, metallic panels that covered her arms and legs. This is new, she whispered. I've never felt this strong. Cole watched her closely, his eyes narrowing in concern. The enhancements are designed to help you heal and give you strength, but you need to be careful. They're still unstable. I had to adjust the neural sync to make sure they don't override your natural systems. Lyra looked at him, a strange mix of gratitude and wariness in her gaze. You saved me. I did what I could, Cole replied, his voice quiet. But you were the one who fought to survive. You're the one who's still here. She paused for a moment, a faint smile curling on her lips. I suppose I have no choice but to thank you then. Cole chuckled softly, but there was something in his chest, a tightness that wouldn't go away. I don't need thanks. I just want to make sure you're okay." Lyra nodded, but then her face grew serious. She looked at the monitors, and her expression darkened. "What's going to happen now?" Cole took a deep breath. "That depends on you. The enhancements are working, but they're not perfect. They're still foreign to your body, and the integration process will take time. You need rest, and I'll need to monitor your vitals closely." She nodded, but her gaze shifted to the window, and Cole could see the faraway look in her eyes. She seemed to be thinking of something. Someone. Her expression tightened, and she closed her eyes briefly. "I was supposed to warn them," she whispered. "The others. My people. They need me." Cole frowned, taking a step closer. "Lyra, you need to focus on healing first. Whatever happens next, we'll deal with it." Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Cole saw the full weight of her burden. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a soldier, someone who had carried the responsibility of her people's survival on her shoulders. And now she was in his care, vulnerable and broken. But even in her weakened state, Cole could see the fire in her eyes. She wasn't going to give up easily. He couldn't let her either. "I know you want to help your people," Cole said gently, "but you can't do that if you're not fully healed. Right now, you need to rest." Lyra seemed to struggle with this for a moment, her fists clenched at her sides. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded. "I'll rest, but only for a while." Cole watched her carefully, a feeling of both relief and concern settling in. He had saved her life, but he knew this was only the beginning. The cybernetics in her body weren't just a tool to keep her alive. They were a part of something much larger. And soon, the truth about who she really was and why she had come to Earth would become clear. For now, though, he could only watch over her, offering what support he could. The rest would come in time. As Lyra drifted back to sleep, her breathing slower and steadier, Cole turned his gaze back to the monitors. He had done his best. Now he would have to be ready for whatever came next. The days passed slowly as Lyra recovered. Her once broken body, now strengthened by the advanced cybernetic enhancements Cole had installed, showed signs of improvement with every passing hour. The team of medics had done their best to help, but it was clear that the real progress was coming from the unique mix of human ingenuity and the alien technology embedded in her. As the days turned into weeks, Cole found himself spending more time with her. The bond between them, once built on necessity, was growing into something deeper. Lyra, though still distant at times, began to open up more. She asked him questions about his world, his people, his life. And though he was careful to keep his answers simple and honest, he couldn't help but feel a growing curiosity about her life too. Who was she really? Where did she come from? What was her mission? One morning, as Cole entered the medical bay to check on her, he found her sitting up in bed, her fingers delicately tracing the metal plating on her arms. Her gaze was distant, but there was a softness in her expression that he hadn't seen before. "How are you feeling today?" Cole asked as he moved closer, checking her vitals. Lyra didn't look up at first. She was silent for a moment before speaking in a quiet voice. "I feel stronger," she said, "but not completely whole." Cole set down his datapad and moved to her side. "It's going to take time. Those implants are powerful, but they need to sync with your body's natural systems. You need rest and care." She nodded, though her eyes were focused on the floor. "I know, but I'm not used to relying on others. I was trained to be self-sufficient, to fight for my people, not to be helpless." Cole could sense the inner conflict within her. Lyra had always been a warrior, and now she was forced into a position of vulnerability. He understood how hard it must be for her, but he also knew it was the only way for her to survive. For now, she needed rest, not more battles. "You're not helpless," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're healing, and when the time comes, you'll be able to fight again. But right now, you need to focus on getting better. We can't afford to rush it." Lyra finally lifted her eyes to meet his, and for the first time, there was a faint hint of a smile on her lips. "You're right, human. I suppose I've always been in a hurry, always chasing something. Maybe I need to learn patience." Cole smiled back, though he could sense the weight in her words. She wasn't just talking about her recovery. There was a deeper, unspoken truth. She had been chasing something far bigger than herself. "Patience is hard," he replied, "but it's something we all have to learn. It's about knowing when to push forward and when to let things unfold. Trust me, I get it." Lyra's gaze softened as she studied him. There was something in her eyes, something vulnerable, that hadn't been there before. She was beginning to see him not just as a medic, but as someone who understood the struggles of both survival and sacrifice. "Tell me more about your people," she said, shifting slightly in bed. "You've told me bits and pieces, but I want to understand you better. You've helped me. I owe you more than just my life." Cole paused, then sat in the chair next to her bed, resting his elbows on his knees. "Well, my people, humans, we're a bit different from your kind. We're resourceful, creative. We've been through a lot, just like you. Wars, struggles, conflicts. But we always find a way to come out stronger. We build, we learn, and we fight when we have to. But we also try to protect those who can't protect themselves." Lyra listened intently, her eyes never leaving his. "And you fight because you want to protect, not just to conquer." Cole nodded. "Yeah, that's how I was raised. We fight to protect our loved ones, our homes. We don't seek war for the sake of war. It's never easy, but sometimes it's necessary." Lyra seemed to reflect on his words for a long while, her fingers tapping lightly against the bed. Her eyes grew distant again, as if she were thinking of her own people, her own struggles. "I understand," she said quietly. "My people, we've been at war for so long that it's all we know. But now I'm not sure if it's worth it anymore. I came here to warn them, to stop the fighting. But after everything that's happened," she trailed off, shaking her head, "I don't know if they'll listen." Cole reached out, placing a hand gently on hers. "Maybe you're the one who needs to listen. To yourself, to what you've been through. You've survived this far, and that says something. You have a choice, Lyra. You don't have to keep fighting if it's not right for you anymore." Lyra met his gaze, her expression conflicted. "I never thought of it that way. I was always trained to think of the mission first. Everything else, it was secondary." "Sometimes," Cole said softly, "the mission changes. Sometimes you have to change too. It's not always easy, but it's the only way to truly move forward." Lyra looked down at their hands, her fingers curled around his, as if she were holding on to the only stability she had left. She was still the warrior, the survivor, but something in her had shifted. The pain of her past was still there, buried deep, but so was a glimmer of something new, a hope maybe, or maybe just the realization that she didn't have to carry the weight of everything on her shoulders alone. I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I know I want to see it. I want to see what comes next, with you." Cole's heart skipped a beat. Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that he hadn't expected. For a brief moment, the walls that had separated them, the ones built by their differences, by her past, by the scars of war, seemed to fade away. They were just two people, connected by something more than survival. "We'll figure it out," Cole replied, squeezing her hand gently. "Together." In that moment, something shifted between them. The lines between patient and medic, between human and alien, blurred. They weren't just two strangers from different worlds anymore. They were allies, partners, and maybe even something more. As the days passed, they continued to talk, to share their stories, and to learn from each other. The bond between them grew stronger with every conversation, every moment of quiet understanding. And as the universe outside seemed to fall deeper into chaos, they found a quiet peace in each other, a peace that was hard-earned and fragile, but something worth protecting. The quiet of the medical bay was shattered by a loud alarm, its blaring tone shaking the very walls of the ship. Cole's heart leaped into his throat as the lights flickered briefly before steadying, signaling an emergency. He was standing by the window, watching the horizon of space when the warning came through. Alert! Enemy ship detected in range. Prepare for possible engagement. The voice over the intercom was clear, but the urgency in it was unmistakable. Cole's breath caught in his chest. The ship wasn't equipped for combat. It was a medical vessel, designed for peacekeeping and humanitarian missions. His first thought was of Lyra. She was still recovering, still vulnerable. The door to the medical bay slid open with a hiss, and one of the ship's crew members, a young officer, hurried in. "Lieutenant Cole, we need you on the bridge. The enemy ship is closing in fast. It's a battle cruiser, far more advanced than anything we're equipped to handle." Cole didn't hesitate. His mind raced as he turned to Lyra, who was still sitting on the bed, her gaze sharp despite the weakness in her body. She had been recovering well, but the sudden sound of alarms had her sitting upright, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "Stay here, Lyra," Cole said, rushing over to her. "I need to help with the situation. I'll be back as soon as I can." She didn't answer at first, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Lyra had been quiet about her past since her recovery, but the distress in her face told Cole that this was not just another attack. This was personal. "No," she said firmly, her voice stronger than he had expected. "I'm coming with you." Before Cole could protest, she stood up, her legs shaky at first, but gaining strength as she stood. The cybernetic enhancements that had been carefully integrated into her body hummed softly, and the once damaged limbs now seemed more powerful than before. "Lyra, you're still recovering," Cole said, his voice a mixture of concern and urgency. "You can't." "I fought worse than this," she interrupted, her gaze steady. "I've survived attacks, battles. I can help. You're not alone in this. You need me." Cole hesitated, his mind torn. Lyra had been through so much already, and the last thing he wanted was for her to put herself in danger. But she was right. This was no time for caution. The enemy was closing in, and they didn't have much time. "All right," Cole said finally, his decision made. "But you follow my lead. No heroics." Lyra gave him a small, determined smile, and together they rushed to the bridge. As they entered the command center, the crew was already in motion, coordinating the ship's defense systems and preparing for what was coming. The viewport showed the vast expanse of space, and in the distance, a massive battle cruiser loomed, a dark silhouette against the stars. It was too close for comfort, and Cole could see the tension on every face in the room. The captain, a seasoned officer named Captain Harris, turned to Cole as he entered. "Lieutenant, we've detected heavy weaponry on that cruiser. They're preparing to engage. We need to make a decision. We can't outrun them, and we're not equipped for a full-scale battle." Cole's mind raced. The ship's weapons were minimal at best, not even enough to put a dent in the cruiser's hull. But Lyra, she was their wild card. He had no idea what her cybernetic enhancements were capable of, but he knew they were far more advanced than any human tech. "I might have an idea," Cole said, turning to Lyra. "Can you handle a control panel? We need to fire the ship's defense systems." Lyra's eyes locked onto him, her gaze unwavering. "Show me what to do. I'll make it work." With no time to waste, Cole led her to one of the auxiliary stations, where the ship's defense system controls were located. He quickly scanned the systems, trying to make sense of the layout. Lyra stood beside him, her fingers hovering over the controls, her eyes glowing faintly as she accessed the ship's system through her cybernetic interface. "I'm in," she said after a moment, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "I can boost the power to the shields, but I need more time to figure out the weapon systems." "Do what you can," Cole ordered. "We need to hold them off long enough to escape. We can't engage them in a direct fight, but if we can disrupt their targeting systems, maybe we can make it." As Lyra worked quickly, Cole turned to Captain Harris. "Do we have a plan for escape?" The captain's face was grim. "We're trying to get the engines online, but the cruiser's lock on our ship is preventing us from jumping into hyperspace. If we can't shake them, we'll have to fight our way out. But our options are limited." Cole nodded. Time was running out. The cruiser was getting closer, its weaponry now fully charged, and the countdown to their attack had begun. He could feel the tension building in the air. Every second counted. "Lyra, how much longer?" Cole asked, his voice tight with urgency. She didn't look up from the console, but her fingers moved faster, more confidently. "Just a few more seconds. I'm sending a jamming signal to their targeting systems now. It should disrupt their aim." There was a moment of silence, and then the ship's systems hummed to life. A crackling sound filled the room as the cruiser's targeting system was jammed. The view from the main screen flickered, showing the enemy ship's weapons shifting erratically as they lost lock on the medical vessel. Cole exhaled in relief. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it bought them some time. The cruiser was still closing in, but now they had a fighting chance. "All right, that's our window," Cole said, turning to Harris. "We need to break free, now." With a nod from the captain, the crew scrambled to engage the escape protocols. Lyra's enhancements were working in overdrive, her focus unwavering, as she continued to disrupt the cruiser's systems. The ship suddenly lurched forward, the engines roaring to life as they attempted to break free from the cruiser's pull. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape. But then, just as the ship accelerated, the enemy fired. A blast rocked the medical vessel, sending a wave of energy through the hull. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights flickered. The ship groaned under the pressure, but they were still moving. They were still alive. "Hold on," Cole shouted. He ran back to Lyra, his heart pounding as he realized how close they were to the edge. Lyra's hands flew over the controls, pushing the ship to its limits. "I've got this," she said, her voice determined. "Just keep going." The ship jolted again, but this time, it was no longer under the cruiser's lock. With a final burst of speed, they broke free from the enemy ship's grip, and the vast expanse of space opened up before them. They had survived. For now. The medical bay was silent once again, but this time, it felt different. The ship had escaped the immediate danger, and they had made it out alive. Cole stood at the window, staring out at the vastness of space. His mind was still racing, replaying the chaos of the battle, and the moments when everything seemed to hang by a thread. But now, the danger had passed. They were safe, for now. Lyra was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back straight, her eyes focused as she adjusted to the new reality. The cybernetic enhancements that had saved her life were working better than anyone could have imagined. She was no longer the fragile survivor she had been when Cole first found her. She was stronger, faster, and more capable. But with that power came new challenges. "You're quiet," Lyra said, breaking the silence. Her voice was softer now, a reflection of the calm after the storm. Cole turned away from the window, meeting her gaze. "Just thinking." She nodded, understanding. "About what?" "The future," Cole replied, his voice steady but filled with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. "We're still in danger. The enemy won't stop hunting you. They'll keep coming, and we can't outrun them forever. So, what do we do next?" Lyra stood up from the bed, her movements fluid and confident, though still tinged with the remnants of her earlier exhaustion. She stepped closer to him, her eyes searching his face. "We fight. We find a way to stop them. I won't run anymore. I've already lost too much." Cole felt a surge of admiration for her resolve. She was a warrior at heart, someone who had been through unimaginable hardship, yet still refused to give up. But he also knew that this path was fraught with danger, and it wasn't just Lyra who would be at risk. The entire ship, the crew, everyone on board was now tied to this fight. "I'm not asking you to fight alone," Cole said, his voice low. "We'll fight together, But we need a plan. We need to be smart about this. Lyra paused, her expression thoughtful. She had been trained for battle, for survival, but this was different. She wasn't just fighting for her life anymore. She was fighting for a future. The future of her people. The future of humanity. And the truth was, she wasn't sure if they could win. I don't have all the answers, she admitted, her voice softer now. But I know what I can do. And I know that I can't stop now. Cole took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Then we'll figure it out. Together. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to show a hint of vulnerability. She had always carried the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders, but now, for the first time, she had someone beside her who wasn't afraid to share that weight. I'm not used to this, she said, almost to herself. Relying on someone else. But maybe it's time I learned. Cole smiled, a warm, reassuring smile. We all need help sometimes. You're not alone in this. You don't have to carry everything on your own. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. The bond between them had grown stronger in the past few days, forged in the heat of battle and the shared experience of survival. She no longer saw Cole just as a medic or a protector. She saw him as an ally, someone who truly understood her struggle. I'll follow your lead, she said, her voice steady now. But I'll help however I can. Cole felt a sense of relief wash over him. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building something worth fighting for. And with Lyra by his side, he believed they could make it through whatever came next. I'm glad to hear that, he said quietly. But first, we need to figure out where to go next. We can't keep running forever. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Her curiosity piqued. Where do you suggest? Cole took a deep breath, his mind already racing with possibilities. We need to contact Earth. There's a network of resistance groups out there. Humans who have been fighting back against the Empire's forces. If we can connect with them, they might be able to help us gather the resources we need to launch a proper counteroffensive. Lyra's eyes narrowed, and a spark of determination lit in her gaze. You think we can win? Cole met her gaze with a steady, unwavering look. I don't know, but I believe we have to try. For you, for your people, and for Earth. Lyra was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'm with you. The weight of her words hung in the air between them, but for the first time in a long while, Cole felt a sense of clarity. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves. All right, Cole said, straightening up. We need to prepare. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and it won't be easy. But if we're going to do this, we have to do it right. Lyra gave him a small, determined smile. Then let's get started. As they walked together toward the ship's command center, their minds were focused on the task ahead. They had no idea what challenges awaited them, no idea how long the fight would last, or how much it would cost. But for the first time, they weren't fighting alone. They were fighting together. The road ahead was uncertain, but as Cole looked at Lyra, he knew that whatever happened, they would face it side by side. And maybe, just maybe, they had a chance to win.